Caroline's discovery. Caroline was a cheerful girl who loved her family very much. She lived in a cosy house with her parents. They always supported her and made her feel special. Her father would tell her bedtime stories, and her mother would cook her favourite meals. Caroline believed her life was perfect, but everything changed on her 18th birthday. Her parents sat her down with serious faces. "Caroline, we need to tell you something important," her father said. Caroline felt her heart start to race. "You were adopted when you were just a baby," her mother added gently. Caroline froze, unable to believe what she had just heard. Her world felt upside down. She had always thought they were her real parents. Now many questions filled her mind. Who were her real parents? Why did they give her away? Were they still alive? Caroline's eyes filled with tears, but she took a deep breath. "I need to find them," she said softly. Her parents nodded, understanding her need to know the truth. Caroline knew this would not be easy, but she was determined. Her journey to uncover her past was about to begin. Caroline started her search by asking her parents if they knew anything about her birth family. Her mother handed her an old envelope. "This was given to us when we adopted you," she said. Caroline opened it carefully. Inside was a letter with the name of the adoption agency and a single photograph. The picture showed a young couple holding a baby. The woman had kind eyes, and the man looked strong and confident. "Are these my real parents?" Caroline asked, her voice trembling. Her father nodded. "We believe so," he said gently. The next day, Caroline visited the adoption agency. The office was quiet and filled with the smell of old paper. A kind woman named Mrs. Harper greeted her. "How can I help you?" she asked. "I'm looking for my birth parents," Caroline explained, showing the photograph. Mrs. Harper looked at the picture and smiled kindly. "Let me check our records," she said. Caroline waited nervously. Her heart was pounding. After a few minutes, Mrs. Harper returned. "I found some information," she said. "Your birth parents lived in a small town called Greenfield. Here's their last known address." Caroline's hands shook as she took the paper. "Thank you," she said, with a mix of fear and excitement. That night she packed her bag. Her parents hugged her tightly. "Be careful, and remember we love you," her mother said. "I'll be back soon," Caroline promised. She knew this journey would change her life forever. Caroline took an early morning bus to Greenfield. The journey was long, with fields and forests stretching as far as she could see. She watched the scenery pass by, her mind filled with questions. What would her birth parents be like? Would they be happy to see her? After hours on the road, the bus finally stopped at the small town. Greenfield was peaceful and quiet, with charming houses and friendly faces. Caroline followed the directions Mrs. Harper had given her. Her heart raced as she stood in front of a small white house with a garden full of flowers. She hesitated for a moment, then knocked on the door. An elderly woman opened it, her eyes filled with curiosity. "Can I help you?" she asked gently. Caroline took a deep breath. I'm looking for the people in this photograph," she said, holding out the picture. The woman's face softened. "Oh dear, come inside," she said, leading Caroline to a cosy living room. "I knew them well. They were kind people, but they left this town many years ago." Caroline's heart sank. "Do you know where they went?" she asked hopefully. The woman thought for a moment. "I heard they moved to the city, but I don't know exactly where," she said. Caroline thanked the woman and left the house. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the town. She felt a mix of disappointment and determination. Her journey was far from over, and she knew she had to keep searching. The next day, Caroline decided to go to the city. She took another bus, and the long journey made her feel tired, but she couldn't stop. She thought about the woman's words. They moved to the city. That was her only clue. The city was very different from the quiet town of Greenfield. It was busy with tall buildings and crowded streets. Caroline felt small and lost in the crowd, but she kept walking, determined to find her parents. She went to a local cafe and asked the woman behind the counter if she knew where the people in the photograph had gone. The woman looked at the picture and smiled. "I think I know them. They lived here a long time ago. I heard they moved to another part of the city," she said. Caroline's heart skipped a beat. "Can you tell me where?" she asked. The woman pointed to the south side of the city. "Try there. It's a bit far, but it's worth a visit." With new hope, Caroline thanked the woman and walked towards the bus station. The streets were busy, but Caroline didn't feel tired anymore. She was closer to the truth. She felt like she was finally getting closer to her real family. Caroline arrived at the south side of the city in the late afternoon. The streets were quieter, and the houses looked old but cosy. She felt nervous as she walked down the road, holding the photograph tightly in her hand. She knocked on the first door and showed the picture to an elderly man. "Do you know these people?" she asked. The man shook his head. "Sorry, I don't," he said kindly. Caroline didn't give up. She knocked on more doors, asking the same question. Some people didn't know anything, and some didn't even answer. Her hope was fading, but she kept going. Finally, at a small blue house with flowers by the door, an older woman opened the door. Caroline showed her the picture. The woman's eyes widened. "Yes, I know them," she said softly. "They are my neighbours. They live just down the street." Caroline's heart raced. "Thank you so much," she said, almost running down the street. She stopped in front of a white house with a wooden fence. Could this be the place? Her hands trembled as she knocked on the door. The wait felt like forever, but then the door opened slowly. Caroline's breath caught in her throat. A middle-aged woman stood in the doorway, her face kind but surprised. "Can I help you?" she asked gently. Caroline took a deep breath and held up the photograph. "Are you my mother?" she asked, her voice shaking. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Caroline," she whispered, "is it really you?" Caroline nodded, tears streaming down her face. The woman stepped forward and hugged her tightly. "I've waited so many years for this moment," the woman said. "I never stopped thinking about you." A man appeared behind the woman, his hair grey but his smile warm. "Is this our Caroline?" he asked softly. Yes, the woman said, still holding Caroline close. They invited Caroline inside. The house was simple, but full of warmth. Photographs hung on the walls, showing moments from the family's life. Caroline listened as her parents explained why they had to let her go all those years ago. It was a painful story, but it was filled with love and sacrifice. By the time the sun set, Caroline felt whole for the first time in her life. She had found the missing pieces of her story, and she knew she would never be alone again.